Эльвира, это Азамат.
Да.
Доброе утро. Может, мы начнем? Уже время 10, стараемся уже по времени как-то идти. Что скажете?
Давайте начнем, коллеги.
Спасибо. Дорогие участники форума, еще раз благодарим всех за то, что присоединились к сегодняшнему мероприятию. Хотелось коротко рассказать о правилах и возможностях мероприятия, который длится, по сути, 2 дня. Сегодня 2-й день. Все микрофоны во время презентации, кроме спикеров, будут отключены. В случае возникновения вопросов вы можете задавать их напрямую в секцию чат, и мы и наши спикеры постараются ответить на них во время сессии вопросов и ответов. У вас также будет возможность во время сессии вопросов и ответов задать голосовой вопрос. Для этого вам нужно поднять руку, и модератор вам даст возможность говорить. Также форум будет проходить на 3 языках: узбекский, русский и английский. И для получения перевода на нужный вам язык вам необходимо выбрать нужный канал перевода. Примечание такое, значит, что перевод на узбекский язык будет проходить на канале с названием японский. Спасибо большое и очень надеемся на активное участие. И всем удачи в проведении этого форума сегодня. Спасибо большое.
Руслан, звука нету.
Jadal rivojlantirish uchun burilish nuqtasi hamda mamlakat rivojlanish trayektoriyasini belgilaydigan yangi yo'nalish bo'lishi mumkin. 2019-yil oktyabrda Prezident Shavkat Mirziyoyev O'zbekistonning 2030-yilgacha yashil iqtisodiyotga o'tish strategiyasini tasdiqladi. Ushbu strategiya aholining arzon energiya ta'minotidan foydalanish imkoniyatini, qayta tiklanadigan energiya manbalari ulushini ko'paytirishni, elektr transportini rivojlantirishni, chiqindilarni qayta ishlashning ilg'or tizimini yaratishni va boshqa samarali chora-tadbirlarni nazarda tutadi. So'nggi yillarda mamlakatda yuz berayotgan o'zgarishlar buning yaqqol tasdig'idir. O'zbekistonda ekologik toza uy-joylar qurish loyihalari amalda joriy etilmoqda hamda ushbu dastur hukumat va mahalliy hokimiyat tomonidan moliyalashtirilmoqda. Barcha hududlarda yangi ish o'rinlari yaratilib, ayollar va yoshlarga alohida e'tibor qaratilmoqda. Mamlakatda yuqori malakali mutaxassislarni tayyorlash va raqamli iqtisodiyotda raqobatbardoshlikni oshirib, yopiq siklning sirkulyar iqtisodiyotiga o'tish uchun dastlabki shart-sharoitlar yaratilmoqda. O'zbekiston Orol dengizi muammolarini hal qilishga ham e'tibor qaratib, uni ekologik innovatsiyalar va texnologiyalar hududiga aylantirishga intilmoqda. Mamlakat rahbariyati yashil investitsiyalarni faol jalb qilmoqda. Buning tasdig'ini aholining zaif qatlamlari uchun yashil ipoteka dasturi misolida ko'rish mumkin. Mamlakatning yashil iqtisodiyotga o'tishi barqaror rivojlanish imkonini beradi. Qolaversa, iqlim o'zgarishi, yerlarning degradatsiyasini oldini olish, biologik va tabiiy ekotizimlarni saqlash bo'yicha xalqaro shartnomalarni amalga oshirishda o'z hissasini qo'shadi. Keling, birgalikda O'zbekistonni yanada obod qilish va yashnatish uchun barcha sa'y-harakatlarni birlashtiraylik.
So I suppose I start now, right, Elvira?
Yes, please, please, Sardar. Now we're giving the floor to Mr. Sardar Kushnazarov, who will lead the moderate the session, today's session. Sorry, just a second. The section on deep dive on green financing instrument. Please, Sardar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elvira. so I make sure that I'm in the right channel, English. So my moderation will be in English. So, good morning, dear friends, colleagues. So now 10 o'clock in Tashkent. And to some of you, maybe already good afternoon and good early morning to those who are late time zones. So I hope that everybody had coffee. I just had my coffee. If those who did not have coffee as yet, hopefully we'll have e-version of the coffee. So today's panel will be on encouraging element of the green recovery, which is about green financing. So my name is Sardor Koshnazarov, and I'll be moderating today's session, deep dive on green financing instruments. So before introducing the speakers of today's panel and the agenda, going through the agenda, I would like to briefly highlight the key issues on why this topic is important. As we are in the first session today morning, I would like to highlight some of the relevant points from yesterday's plenary sessions and other breakout sessions, where very key, very important issues have been raised. Many suggestions were made. So COVID-19 pandemic and resource for development models have taught economies globally a lesson, albeit with human and financial cost. Countries with their economies hit by the pandemic have faced challenges on how their future development path must be, business as usual or in a more sustainable, inclusive, or green way. Many countries have chosen the second path. I believe it's the right choice, and this way Uzbekistan must develop too. Post-pandemic is the right time for Uzbekistan to revisit its growth model and financing priorities, and these priorities will have to turn to actions. As was fairly stated yesterday by an honorary speaker yesterday, cost of inaction is high. So to give a tangible sense to this, today, 92% of global population breathe polluted air. This means, by comparison, at that rate, 32 million people in Uzbekistan are lacking clean air. World Health Organization estimates that around 7 million people die every year from exposure to polluted air. To compare from COVID-19, the toll is 2,560,000 people by today. In this context, for Uzbekistan, it is encouraging that the government has made a bold step to include green criteria in publicly funded projects. This is a good start. I'm sure you support what Mr. Kuchkarov, Deputy Prime Minister, said yesterday. Green recovery should be viewed not as a burden, but additional driver of growth, a way of stimulating economic growth and development. And Mr. Alisher Maksudov, State Ecology and Environmental Protection Committee Chairman, stated also, eco-friendly solutions will need to be introduced in all industries. So first actions have started in this direction. There are ambitious plans of the government to expand power capacity using renewable sources. Additional over 8.4 gigawatt, including solar and wind, and withdrawal of 5.3 gigawatt of all resource-intensive capacities over the period of 21 to 2030. These efforts will require substantial investments, mobilization of new and rechanneling existing financings. In our estimate, the power sector alone may need over $15 billion financing by 2030. It needs to be admitted that financing the green economy has not been sufficient. It is not sufficient today, and the need for financing will only grow. We support the government view that financing sources will need to be diversified. The government cannot and should not finance all the efforts and the projects in all fronts. There are many players and financial instruments. One of such sources can be green bonds, including green sukuk. UNDP supported debut green Kazakh tenge bond October last year, for example. and multilateral financial institutions such as the BRD, ADB, World Bank, and others, private investors, and they must be the key financiers in the future. Green funds that create pool of resources from various investors, multilaterals, institutional climate funds, and private investors. On that note, once again, it is my pleasure to moderate today's panel with distinguished speakers. So our speakers include today Muhammad Didi Hardiana, working at UNDP as head of the Innovative Financing Lab and head of experimentation of acceleration lab at the UNDP Indonesia, and he will be speaking on green finance instruments, green global trends. After him, Mr. Vincent Duijinhauer, Associate Director, Energy Efficiency and Climate Change at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and his topic will be EBRD's green programs, including JEF, Fintech, and High Impact Program for the corporate sector. And he'll be followed by Isomiddin Ikramov, Regional Project Director, ACTED, Agency for Technical Cooperation and Development, a French humanitarian non-governmental organization, and he'll be speaking about SME development and green financing. After him, the panel will be closed by Ms. Ingrid Keilhol, Administrator, European Commission's Directorate General for International Partnerships, and she'll be speaking about European Union green financing instruments. So my advice to the participants, so at the end of the panel today, we'll have 30-minute Q&A session. As Elvira suggested, please post your questions through Q&A section of this platform below, or chat box, or you can raise your hand during the Q&A session, or you may give your question on voice version of the platform. So without further ado, and I would like to offer the stage to Mr. Muhammad Din Hardiana. He's currently working at UNDP as head of Innovative Financing Lab, as I said. So he's leading the dynamic team to unlock and leverage new innovative solutions to finance the SDGs in partnership with public and private stakeholders through various windows, including Islamic finance, green finance, blended finance, impact investments. So Mr. Muhammad Didi, so stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sador, for the introductions, and good morning, colleagues. I hope you can hear me well. So my name is Muhammad Didi Hardiana. I'm the head of Innovative Financing Lab in UNDP Indonesia, and it's a really good and honor to be here in front of you, and also together with all the distinguished panels. And allow me to share about the green sukuk and also the global trends, and also lesson learned from Indonesia's experience. I hope you can see my screen. Can someone confirm that?
Yes, we see.
Okay. Yeah, so again, thank you so much. And so I will start my presentation. So as Sador already mentioned, of course, currently this period is like a difficult time for all the countries in the world. And like most of the countries also like are facing like a fiscal deficit, and also like a recession, yeah, in 2020. And hopefully this year will be like the time for us to build back better and hopefully greener. So one of the potential financing to help the government, the countries to recover from the impact of the pandemic will be in the form of a green bond or green sukuk. So let me explain a little bit on this slide that the global green bond sukuk and also sustainability bond issuance has reached about 321 billion US dollar in 2019, and it is like an increase from the previous year which green bond, as we can see in the first graph, reach the largest portion, followed by the sustainability bond and a social bond. On the second slide, on second graph, according to the OECD's, in July 2020, there have now been around 16 countries that issued green bonds, exceeding about $80 billion US. And hopefully this momentum keep to date and in response to the COVID-19 and sustainable recovery. In Indonesia, we have issued this kind of instrument since 2018, and the government has raised about $3.2 billion US from the green sukuk issuance in domestic and also global market. So interestingly, we also see that that some of the prominent choices are talking in many forms and instruments of Islamic finance, and we hope that green sukuk can help countries meet their climate ambition and also SDGs and attract wider investor base as the demand for environmentally conscious investment grow. However, for green sukuk, I think it's still very limited today, and the majority currently are in the Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, and some of Middle East countries. And we claim ourselves, the government said that Indonesia was the first world first sovereign green sukuk issuer. Okay, so on the second slide, maybe some of you already familiar with this regarding the green bond principles. So there are 4 pillars for issuings of a green bond or green sukuk. So there are use of proceeds, project evaluation and selection, management of proceeds, and reporting. So I think this is like the first things that need to be considered by the issuer, about the parties who want to issue green bond on green sukuk, is to develop a green bond framework. So for example, in Indonesia, the government published this in 2017 with the support of UNDP, and they are putting like 9 eligible sectors that can be financed by the green bond, which you can see on the right side. So including energy efficiency, sustainable transport, adaptation, and also waste management. And the second pillar is regarding the project evaluation and selection, which sometimes becoming the difficulties for the sovereign issuer, because hard to identify the green projects in the budgeting system. So in Indonesia, they are implementing budget tagging process to identify green projects. So this tools is integrated in the planning and budgeting system, and it make the government or Ministry of Finance easier to select the relevant projects. And the third one is about the management of proceeds, where the Ministry of Finance, in this case, or the issuer, should guarantee how many percentage of the proceeds will be used to the green projects. Some issuers put 100%, some issuer maybe less than that. And the last one, which is most important, is that the reporting, because the investors want to know about how actually their money contribute to the environment, including the climate change. So it is important for the issuer to issue reporting regularly. In the case of Indonesia, they issued annually. And last thing from this slide is about the important also for the framework to be assessed by a second party opinion. In this case, government selected Cicero, who is actually one of the world's leading green bond reviewer based in Norway. So learning from the Indonesia's issue on why they decided to issue green sukuk in the beginning, that was, of course, maybe similar with Uzbekistan, the commitment, the high ambition and commitment from the government to achieve the climate action target and also the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. In Indonesia, we have the nationally determined contribution that issued in 2016 that aiming to reduce 29% of greenhouse gas emission reductions, which of course this will require a huge amount of funding. And according to the needs from the government, we see that it is important to have innovative financing instrument in the form of green sukuk. So the government issued the global green sukuk since 2018 in total amount of 2.5 billion US dollar, 2.75 billion US dollar. And in addition to that, the government also issued the green sukuk in retail market. We can see here actually like for the retail market, there's also like high appetite from the retail investor on investing in this kind of instrument, which I consider very impactful. And for example, in 2020, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the government can tap into around 16,000 retail investors, which most of them are a millennials generation. And we can also see that by the government issued this kind of impact investing instrument, it is also providing positive spillover to the domestic market as three financial institutions in Indonesia also has issued green and or sustainable bonds. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, that it is important that the instrument also reporting the achievement, right? The contribution to the climate change and also to the SDGs. So here on the right side is some of the example of the impact that measured by the green sukuk. So for example, it is able to projected emission reduction about 8.9 billion ton CO2 equivalent, as well as contributing to the SDGs. So in Indonesia, UNDP is honored as the main partner of the government to support the Green Sukuk initiative. And we have been also providing support to several potential issuers from municipal government and private sector. So what have been done and what kind of support that the UNDP provide in this regard? Which I believe also the UNDP Uzbekistan also like have a very strong collaboration and support to the government in their plan to issue this kind of instrument. So we are providing technical assistance in regards to the pre and post issuance of the instrument, which include about the development of the framework, project selection process. We are providing capacity building to several line ministries who are the owners of the projects. And in addition to that, we also support in providing space for the government to speak about their success in several regional and also global events. So last slide from my side, regarding lessons learned from the Green Sukuk initiative in Indonesia, I split this into two, the pre-issuance and post-issuance. So in the pre-issuance stage, it is important to focus on the development of the framework, especially how to align that with the national priorities, such as the NDC or SDGs. The second, of course, also important to have the second opinion. This will give like a guarantee or confidence to the market. And then regarding the project selection process, which a robust system is necessary so that we can identify and later on to monitor the results. While on the post-issuance part, it is important to have a strong engagement between all stakeholders. In Indonesia, the government established a task force among the ministries to facilitate the communications and also to build the capacity. And then further, we also supported through capacity and knowledge development by providing such as impact measurement and reporting, and also providing like a support in the campaign, like I mentioned before. And the last one, a partnership also play important role because like UNDP is not working alone in this part. We work together with World Bank and also several banks who is supporting the issuance of the green sukuk, for example, HSBC and BNP Paribas. So I hope these slides are useful for the participants in this forum. And as a closing statement, I can say that green sukuk is facing a growing market demand for sustainable and responsible investment, and that's a positive outlook for its market. So hopefully more countries will issue green sukuk and becoming like a pioneering role in leveraging untapped financial resources for green and sustainable development as well as economic recovery. I will stop here and I will give it back to the moderator. Thank you so much and have a good morning.
Thank you very much. Indeed, UNDP Indonesia's experience on sukuk issuance would be very relevant and very much needed for Uzbekistan as well. And to our knowledge, UNDP Uzbekistan also has initiated developing green sukuk in Uzbekistan. It, along with other government agencies, specifically Capital Markets Development Agency, have developed a policy brief on introducing green sukuk in Uzbekistan. And I think that I hope relevant regulators like the Central Bank or Minister of Finance or a Capital Markets Development Agency and other interested stakeholders would have questions to you. So to participants, please again be advised to prepare your questions for the last Q&A session in the end that we will have dedicated 30 minutes. So while you pose your question, please could you indicate your name and the name of the speaker that you address your question to. So so we'll move on to the next session. I'm privileged to introduce Mr. Vincent Duyenhauer, Associate Director, Energy Efficiency and Climate Change at the EBRD. So his topic will be EBRD's green programs, including JEF, Fintech, and High Impact Program for the corporate sector. Just for the sake of time, so JEF, or Green Economy Financing Facility, supports businesses and homeowners wishing to invest in green technologies. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Vincent. So JEF has already provided financing several projects in Uzbekistan under this program. So Fintech, Finance and Technology Transfer Center for Climate Change, a program that is part of a global drive towards climate technology transfer for developing countries and countries in transition. So Mr. Vincent, stage is yours. Please be reminded due to our time constraint, we have dedicated 7 minutes for each session, please.
Thank you, Sardar, and good morning, dear colleagues, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you here this morning, virtually in Tashkent. I hope you're well, keeping healthy. As Sardar kindly mentioned, I'll be speaking about a couple of instruments we at the EBRD are implementing in Uzbekistan or are planning to launch very shortly. But maybe just before I move on to the programs, if my slides will let me. You may know that the EBRD is a multilateral development bank with a clear focus on green finance, and under the recently approved green strategy, our green economy transition approach tool, covering the period 2021-2025, we've committed to become a majority green bank, in the sense that by 2025, over 50% of our finance will be covering green finance and green projects. In Uzbekistan, we've supported around 30 projects in the last 4 years, covering a wide range of sectors, providing over 800 million of green finance in the country. We're very pleased with the strong cooperation with the government, other stakeholders in the private sector. But today I want to speak briefly about 3 instruments that cover the private sector. And as Sardor mentioned, the first one is the Green Economy Financing Facility. So this is a $60 million program of the EBRD that finances projects in the area of energy efficiency and renewable energy in Uzbekistan. So the model is that we provide finance to local partner financial institutions who then on-lend this finance to companies to implement energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. It's supported by also the Taiwan Business EBRD Cooperation Fund that has kindly supported us to provide funding for the technical assistance package that comes with this program and is implemented by a team of consultants led by a GFA consulting group together with local experts. As part of this program, it's important to mention that we've also developed a technology selector, which is available online. This is an online instrument of the program that allows for fast and easy use of eligible technologies in different sectors of the economy that result in energy and resource savings. And the link to the technology selector is shown in the slide, so you may review it at your convenience. Now, the second program I wanted to briefly present to you today is our regional Fintech program, which is a regional program supported by the Global Environmental Facility to support the introduction of climate technologies in the region, including Uzbekistan. And on this slide, you will see an example of a project we supported in the agribusiness sector with the company Tilodumor. We provided 2 million of EBRD finance to the company, combined with a fintech grant of $100,000, which allows the company to introduce a cleaning in place installation, which allows the company to recover cleaning chemicals, but also includes the installation of heat exchangers and equipment to recover solids to produce ricotta from whey. So you will see the associated physical savings on this slide, which are mainly related to natural gas savings, a reduction of cleaning chemicals, and a reduction of water consumption. So very clearly a very important project that has a number of environmental benefits. Now, the third program I wanted to present to you today is our high impact program for the corporate sector, supported by the Green Climate Fund. This is a program that was approved by the GCF board in August of last year. Again, a regional program that also covers Uzbekistan. We are currently finalizing the project documentation with the GCF and hope to launch this program in the third quarter of this year. We're very excited about this program because we feel it's a very impactful and novel program covering the manufacturing industries, agribusiness, and the non-energy mining sector. And the novelty of this program is that, in essence, we will be supporting companies to make a transformative shift in the sector that comes through a combination of introducing high climate impact technologies, but also with incentives that will allow for behavioral changes at the corporate governance level that will ensure that companies start introducing climate risks into their corporate governance processes and with clear KPIs. So the way the program is structured is that we from EBRD will be providing our own finance together with, of course, a contribution by the client. But the GCF is able to provide up to 30% of the total project cost. In fact, the pricing of this GCF loan is connected with certain KPIs related to corporate governance improvements and the introduction of technology. So what we'll see during program implementation, that if the company reaches certain KPIs in terms of climate corporate governance, we'll be able to reduce the margin on the GCF tranche, which we think is a very impactful financial instrument that is in fact not being widely used in the region at the moment. So yeah, here I indicate a couple of eligibility requirements for this program for those of you on the webinar today that may be interested. Obviously, we're looking at projects with a substantial physical impact, and there will also be certain requirements linked to climate governance, gender issues, and other elements shown here on this slide. Happy to take questions on this. Happy to take questions on these programs now, or you can reach out to me bilaterally. And with that, I'll pass the floor back to Sardar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Excellent time management. Really appreciate. So I'm sure that we have representatives of private sector who are participating today, and I hope that they will have questions, maybe specific business proposals by the end of the day. So my privilege to introduce to the next speaker, Mr. Isamuddin Akramov. He's a regional project manager at ACTED. It's a French agency for technical cooperation development. It's a humanitarian non-governmental organization and non-government, non-political, non-profit organization. And he will be speaking about SME development and green financing. Mr. Akramov, stage is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well. And we see your presentation as well.
Sardar, thank you so much. This is an honor to me to present today. I will talk today about SME development and green financing in Uzbekistan. I will give brief information about the ACTED. ACTED is an international non-governmental organization founded in 1993, and then we actually based in Paris. We have more than 300 implementing projects in 35 countries. Of course, the office is in Uzbekistan. I would like to describe the situation in Uzbekistan on small medium enterprises. If you will see the left side of the slide, here I would like to describe SME distribution by the sector. Mostly in Uzbekistan, SME sector working in trade sector and also in industry, about 21%. Unfortunately, social sector is less developed. Mainly SMEs prefer work in industry sector, but we have a great opportunity to develop tourism sector as well. And then the government is now trying to create more guest houses and also small enterprises in the field of the tourism sector. At the right side, we have an information about the SMEs operating in Uzbekistan. Currently in Uzbekistan, more than 400,000 SMEs are operating, according to data of the Statistics Committee of the Republic of Uzbekistan. Here I highlighted the information disaggregated by the regions. Mostly SMEs located in Tashkent. If you can see, about 85,000 SMEs operating in Tashkent, as well as more than 30,000 SMEs operating in Fergana. Unfortunately, we have two regions where less developed SME operating. It is Karakal, Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia. I would like to encourage maybe international organizations attend in these regions like Saudi Arabia and Karakal, Pakistan, in order to develop SME sector and also to give more maybe investment opportunities. In other regions has also about 20,000 MSMEs per regions. It is like average in our country. Here I would like to talk about the importance of the SMEs in the economy of Uzbekistan. First of all, SMEs share in GDP 54% currently. And then without the SMEs, we cannot imagine our economy. It is the main drive currently. Of course, Uzbekistan trying to do the best to develop this sector. According to World Bank Doing Business assessment, Uzbekistan ranked 69th among 190 countries. It is also one of the good results. It is big step to forward. The second thing, SME has special point in employment, making employment and then creation of the job. SMEs provide about 80% of the job. It's equal like 10,000 people are working in this sphere. The next importance is domestic output. Currently, SME making about 30%, exactly 27% of the industry. And then there is also big share of the SMEs in export, like 20%. If you see the line graph, it is highlighted in red lines. So if you see, starting from 2000, every time is increasing the share of the small business and private entrepreneurship in Uzbekistan, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the indicators of the SMEs are decreased. We hope that the next year we will try to cover with our innovative ideas and with the support of the international organizations. Of course, we have challenges where we're facing in one side of the green financing. Let's talk about the problems. The first problem is lack of the awareness of the SMEs on green financing. The second problem is low financial literacy and business skills. There has a lack of capacity on business planning as well. The third point is willingness to invest for their business. There is also risk. For example, when operating small farms, there has a risk that government is the owner for the land and then they cannot invest their business. The next issue is the legal and regulatory business environment. Sometimes we have a problem with the getting the registration in other rules as well. And last but not least, the issue is lack of the promotion incentives. Government is trying to give subsidies, but it's not enough yet to develop the SME sector, I mean, for financing. So we have also barriers from the supply side, I mean, about green financing. The first barrier is high cost of the bank credit, and then delivery mechanism is not developed yet. Of course, the big issue in Central Asia, it is collateral requirements. The small business cannot to provide collaterals, and then lack of the alternative sources of SME financing. If you see the chart here, 21% of the people choosing family and friends to invest or to get their financial sources. Only 67% MFI SMEs use MFI services because they are fast and easy. We have again problem with the banking system. So SME source of the mainly comes from the you can see from family and friends, and then from bank loans about 26%. We have in Uzbekistan green financing opportunities. About 10 banks are working with the international organizations. EBRD recently made a presentation that they are also doing good job. This is the JEF project, and also IFC and World Bank also providing green financing for energy efficiency facilities for industrial enterprises as well. Last but not least, one of the big project, UNDP, there has also project market transformation for sustainable rural housing. This is 10 banks actively working to give opportunity on green financing. So, but we have a concept of the green financing. Let's say the 4 pillars of the green financing interface. First of all, it should be financial industry. Development of the new financial products should be in place. And then without the new technologies industry, we cannot to set up the green financing. And the second pillar is green finance. Green financing enterprises and technologies should be in place. Of course, when we are doing the project, we have to consider environmental risks in lending decisions as well. The next pillar is environmental empowerment. If we would like to put in place the green financing, we have to ensure better environment through the green industries and technologies. And also one drive could be the better legislation and also environment for doing business. Last but not least pillar is economic growth. Being the developing countries, Central Asian countries should develop of new technologies, and then it should be the market for renewable energy or alternative sources. Of course, it is essential to promote eco-friendly industries in the region at all. So we would like to also suggest to our colleagues, to the participants, there is alternative solution. For example, we said that MSMEs don't have an investment to buy, let's say, very expensive renewable energy technologies, or they don't have a willingness to invest for their business, or there is a problem with the bank, big collaterals and also high interest rate. As you know, I think the main participant knows about the pay-as-you-go model. This model launched in African countries. We would like to also propose to set up, of course, with the support of international organizations, pay-as-you-go model also will fulfill the conditions of the Central Asia. The model works as follows. For example, end users only to pay for solar energy in weekly installments or whenever they are financially liquid. Yeah, the company will provide this pay-go model when end user cannot to pay. Electricity supply is cut off once the payment expires, and then using the SMS reminder is again set to the customer. It will help us to be avoid from the risks that customer will not pay the technology or renewable energy technology. There are two benefits. This is first, affordable energy access for MSMEs, and also it doesn't require to purchase significant capital prior to its use. Recently in Uzbekistan, local adjacent power company launched the pay-as-you-go model. You can enter their site. Actually, I'm happy that we are trying to set up such kind of the models in our country. The next, ACTED's green project. ACTED also aiming to green the organization to be green, and also by reducing our carbon footprint, of course, upscaling our work on climate change and environment protection by 2022. We would like to minimum decrease our green actions by 25%. Currently, ACTED in Uzbekistan implementing EU-funded project on sustainable energy for tourism project. This project aims also support SMEs in tourism sector. We have several activities. The first, it will be developed eco-certification, and then we would like to organize demonstration of the green hostels in 3 countries, in Kyrgyzstan, in Uzbekistan, in Tajikistan as well. Matchmaking platform will be established for SMEs. We would like to also provide a catalog on renewable energy products existing, because it is essential to be more awareness SMEs on existing products. Last but not least, but this is very important, we would like to develop 2 gender-sensitive green finance products for Uzbekistan. Currently, we are working on creation of the working group, but I would like to ask for our colleagues from international organizations, let's not to duplicate, but let's to work together, because the goal is to achieve the green financing, and also to put our ideas together and then to achieve our goals. I encourage you to participate in our meetings. We are open. We will be glad to hear from you also ideas on green financing products. Thank you so much. If you have further questions, please contact us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sameddin, for comprehensive presentation. And I liked specifically the end, your call for cooperation and work together. So I think that your call be responded by the end of today and hopefully soon. So my privilege to introduce you to our next speaker, Ms. Ingrid Keilhol, Administrator, European Commission's Directorate General for International Partnerships, and she will be covering the topic European Union Green Financing Instruments. Ms. Keilhol, stage is yours.
Yes, hello. Good morning, everybody. It's very early here in Brussels. It's still 7 o'clock in the morning and it's dark. I think my video is not so good, so maybe I'll try to remove the background. Okay, here you can see me better probably. Let me share my screen as well. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
That would be good if you switch to
yeah. Okay. So I work for the Directorate General in charge of international partnerships, which used to be called DEFCO previously, but recently changed name and was reorganized. And I work in particular in the unit which is in charge of climate change and sustainable energy related projects. So I will start with a few contextual elements, probably that you heard some of them already yesterday. First of all, climate change is of course at the core of the new European Commission's strategy. As you know, when President von der Leyen was elected, she engaged very strongly on this topic, and the European Green Deal was adopted in 2019. So what is the European Green Deal? It's first of all a growth strategy, and it is also a roadmap to become the first carbon neutral continent by 2050. Sorry. We're also engaged on climate change internationally. And there we engage with third countries by building green alliances and also by promoting global green energy transitions. Indeed, as you know,
1 second.
sorry, yes.
On your screen, there is a black box on your right. Close it because all part of the slide is not visible.
Okay. Is it better like this?
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So why are we engaging in these global green energy transitions? Well, first of all, because the energy sector accounts for about 2/3 of global man-made greenhouse gas emissions. So what do we do in particular? We promote renewable energy. We try to improve energy efficiency, and we promote also better access to energy. These are goals that are, of course, translating into the SDG 7. And we do this through 3 main pillars, which are political dialogue, technical assistance, and capacity building as well, and by supporting investments. So why do we support investments? Because as you can see from the figures on this slide, the challenges are huge. There are still 770 million people without access to electricity. We need to spend an enormous amount per year if we want these people to gain access to electricity. And for the time being, we're really far away from achieving SDG 7. So there is a need to mobilize and de-risk private and public investments, and to try to stimulate also the private sector to contribute to this effort, because public development aid will never be enough, will never be sufficient. This new investment-friendly attitudes has started with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Development in 2015. And since then, quite a few elements have been put in place, at least at the level of the European Commission, First of all, we started implemented what we call blending. So you've heard very often this term. And what is blending? Blending is about using using an EC contribution and mixing it with a private or public money to invest in a project. So the idea is that the EC provides a grant, for instance, to finance feasibility studies, which are needed to validate an investment, for instance. Or we may co-finance an investment to decrease the overall cost of an investment. So the idea is that we cover a small share of this investment to get it off the ground, and an investment wouldn't probably happen if it weren't with this additional push that is given by the EC contribution. So in the framework of blending, we have set up several regional investment facilities for Central Asia. The facility is the Investment Facility for Central Asia, called also IFCA. So with the adoption of the European Investment Plan by President Juncker in 2017, the EC went a step further and established what is known as the EFSD, but we use a lot of acronyms in Brussels, and it's good that you know what it stands for. So it's the European Fund for Sustainable Development. And this European Fund for Sustainable Development was initially meant mostly for Africa and the neighborhood region. And the novelty is that it did not only support blending, but it also established guarantees to reduce risks for private investors and to absorb potential losses. And this was the EFSD was launched, as I said, in 2017, so during the previous programming period. But now the good news is that during the upcoming programming period starting this year in 2021 and running until 2027, the guarantees will be extended to the whole world, and so will all the blending initiatives. So the new external action guarantee will allow the EU to decrease risks for investment operations and to support countries also experiencing balance of payments crisis. So these are new elements for the new programming period. So let me give you now a couple of examples of innovative financial instruments that we are supporting. I think the most well-known one is Electrify, but I realized that it has very little activities in Central Asia. That's why I decided to speak about it today. So what is Electrify? So Electrify is, first of all, a project that is managed by the ETFI MC management company. So what is ETFI? ETFI is an association of 15 European development financing institutions, amongst whom there are some very famous names like FMO, the Dutch Development Financing Institution, KfW, Proparco, the French DFI. And this management company manages some 126 million euro to run an impact investment facility. So the specific positioning of Electrify is that it supports early stage private companies and projects in the renewable energy market. It provides mainly loans, for the time being more than 73% are loans, but it can also engage in equity. It is quite flexible actually in terms of financial structuring or financial products that it can offer. It is very engaged, for instance, in solar. The previous speaker mentioned the pay and go technology. Well, this is something that Electrify does. It supports companies like Boost Africa, for instance, companies which are quite engaged in providing solar home systems in Africa, for instance. What else? Yeah, the ticket size. The ticket size of Electrify is between 500,000 and 10 million, so really small projects. And it seeks to provide the first loss also to allow other DFIs to engage and provide additional funds. So this is for Electrify, and following the same principle as Electrify, which focuses on renewable energies, you have Agrify. So Agrify is also managed by this EDFI management company. It is fully financed also by the EC. It manages a smaller amount, around 40 million euro, and it provides long-term finance and working capital, which is needed in the form of debt or equity, just like Electrify, but to SMEs or micro and medium and small and medium-sized enterprises, which are active in the agri-food value chain and involving also smallholder farmers. So I think this could be very interesting for Central Asian countries. It supports projects from a range between 500,000 and 5 million euros. So again, rather small-sized projects. And it provides loan with a tenor of 15 years as an average. Another program which may be interesting, so far I don't think it's implemented in Central Asia, but I think there is potential for this project to develop. It's Climate Investor One. Climate Investor One is held by FMO. FMO is the Dutch DFI, which delegates the management to climate fund managers, which is a fund manager, and CIO, so that's the way we name it, supports mainly on-grid projects in the area of solar, photovoltaic, wind, runoff river, hydro, renewable energy. And this project have a capacity, typical capacity of between 10 and 70 megawatts and are worth between 50 and 100 million euros. So basically the positioning of Climate Investor One is that it supports bigger projects. It's so far very active in Southeast Asia, for instance. So the specificity of Climate Investor One is that it comprises 3 distinct but interlinked funds, as you can see on the slide. There is first of all a development fund, which provides technical assistance and helps the company in the development stage of the project. Then you have the construction equity fund. So there, CIO provides equity financing for the construction phase of the project. And the fund is layered in 3 different layers. And we, the EU, we support the first loss layer, whereas for the more safe, secure layers, you also have private investors, commercial investors providing financing. And then there is a third fund, which is the refinancing fund, which hasn't been set up yet and to which the EU doesn't contribute, which is meant to provide loans for the project when it enters into a more mature phase. Following the same principle as Climate Investor One, which, as I told you, focuses on grid projects in the energy field, you have also Climate Investor Two. Climate Investor 2 focuses on water, and therefore I also thought it could be very relevant for Central Asia, because indeed the water sector is the biggest employer in Central Asia, if you put together all forms of water use and management. And water plays, of course, a key role in food and energy security. So what does Ci2 do? Well, first, it takes a bit the same architecture as Climate Investor One, which I've just presented. And it also has 3 different funds. So there is, again, a development fund for the project preparation phase, a construction equity fund for the construction phase, and a recycling fund to which the EU doesn't contribute financially. So what does Ci2 do in particular? It invests in water. It supports investments in water supply, sanitation, and oceans infrastructure in emerging markets. And the advantage is that it provides single financing solution during the whole phase of the project, from the beginning till the very end of the project. So these were a couple of examples of projects that are financed by the EU and which I thought could be interesting for this region. I invite you to take a look at the website of these projects and to take contact with the fund managers in case of interest. And I would like to thank you also for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You have a very strong echo.
Yes, Sardor, please check your mic.
Actually, I'm connected through one device. So now it's fine, right?
It's better. It's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Azamat. So thank you to all 4 speakers for comprehensive, very interesting, and more importantly, very encouraging presentations. Because many people, hopefully in our audience, like financing aspects of their projects, and hopefully they'll find their potential strategic partners during our forum today, and maybe they continue their potential leads in coming weeks and months. So now we finished our four presentations. Now the turn is to questions and answers session. We have 23 minutes until the next session. So once again, I encourage our participants, presumably they are from all backgrounds and from industries, from the government, from state-owned companies, private companies, civil society, non-government organizations, multilateral financial institutions, local financial institutions like banks. And I hope that there are many synergies voiced, synergy opportunities voiced today. And please don't be shy, raise your hand to address your voiced version of your question. And our organizer, co-host, will arrange that. Or you can address your questions in Q&A box below or chat box. So please be advised if indicate the name of the speaker that you would like to address your question. So the floor is open for questions from the audience. Are there any questions?
There is one question. Thank you, Sardar. I'm going to read it if you guys don't mind. Quick question from Ravshan Yunusov on green bonds Sukuk. I noticed that the average tenor of green bonds is 5 years. Can you please also advise the average payback period of green investments in Indonesia, for example, in renewable energy? Thank you. Over.
Muhammad Didi, I think that question is to you, I guess, or any of the speakers may jump in anytime.
Yes, thank you, Sardor. Yes, regarding those questions on the payback period, that's correct. I mean, for the green bond and green sukuk, mostly the tenor is 5 years. While for conventional bond, I think it's much longer, sometimes even I think 10 or 15 years. I think that's considering about the period of the green project itself, right? Considering about the depreciation and also others. related the payback period of green investments in Indonesia, although like this is maybe a bit different cases. But in Indonesia, it's quite different. But the government, along with the stakeholders, is currently also preparing the much more comfortable period that can attract investor. And in some cases, the payback period usually between 2 until 5 years in Indonesia. I hope that's answer your question, and later maybe I can add more information in the chat. Over.
Thank you, Muhammad Didi. Any other questions from the audience?
Just a quick reminder that you can raise your hand if you want to have access to mic and directly ask your question to the speakers. Thank you. На русском переведу. Коллеги, вы можете, дорогие участники, вы можете также поднять руку, то есть есть такая опция в меню, чтобы задать вопрос непосредственно к докладчикам. Благодарю.
Just while the participants formulate their questions, I have a question to Mr. Muhammad Didi, again coming back to the experience of UNDP Indonesia on Sukuk. So just a little update about what's happening on green Sukuk front in Uzbekistan. As I said, the UNDP is a pioneering agency here to propose to the government to consider the possibility of issuing debut green Sukuk in Uzbekistan, and the regulator, Capital Markets Development Agency, has been also supportive of that initiative. So there is now a draft government resolution on launching and having in general the legislative and institutional framework to do so. So again, there would be a logical question, and that question has been raised so far by the industries with regard to the additional cost of a bond being, or Sukuk being green. So the question would be the use of proceeds of those green Sukuk. So for what purposes the proceeds are used for, and whether if there are additional costs associated with being green. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sardor. So if I've understand it correctly, so there are 2 points. The first one regarding the additional costs, and then regarding the use of proceeds. So I think there will be a bit a difference between like sovereign issuer and also like the for the private issuer, yeah. So from my perspective, I think that, but for the additional cost, I think it's similar. So it is correct that for the sustainable bond, green bond, or thematic bond, whatever, it will require additional costs compared to the conventional, because like first, like the issuer need to develop the frameworks, right? And then regarding also the second party opinion that need to be conducted for the framework. I think those two are the first difference before the issuance of this bond or Sukuk. And then the other part will be for the post issuance regarding about the collecting the information to measure the impact, as well as to report, to prepare the report to the investor, right? And in this will be also including auditing of the report to ensure that the report like is aligned with the framework and the standard, right? So those are several of the costs, additional costs, which unfortunately, like currently, there is no like maybe like additional support or like a different pricing, yeah, of the green bond or conventional bond, right, in the market, which of course it will be a burden for the issuer. So this may be still a challenge, but there's actually the role of us, like the UNDP development partners, in providing support to the government or to the issuer in providing technical assistance in preparing the framework, impact measurement, and so on. But maybe for the second party opinion auditor, it will be be allocated or be charged to the government or to the issuer, right? So this may be what will be the additional liability. Regarding the use of proceeds, I think as I presented about the frameworks, so the framework should mention about what kind of projects or sectors that can be financed by the funding or the money that raised from the green bond, right? So it is important that the issuers identify which green projects that becoming the priority of the government or of the private sector, and then ensure that the project are operational or will be operational. I mean, that's actually the challenge, because sometimes, like last year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing projects getting delayed, right? So that will be trouble for the issuers, because like they cannot ensure that the green project that they're committed is financed. So what will be necessary is that there is a buffer. The issuer need to have a buffer of green projects within their portfolio. So once one or two projects are delayed, they can change to the other project, but we still consider as green. I hope that answers your questions.
Yep. Thank you, Mohammed. Very exhaustive response. Really appreciate. Thank you. Please, any questions from the audience? If you want to address, please raise your hand, so that we encourage this discussion to be more energetic and live. So for the sake of saving time, I have another question to Vincent. Thank you for the presentation, and there were general scope of financing requirements. My question would be, and I think that this question would be interesting for potential investment targets or for private sector representatives from our audience, that they would like to know whether your program, your financing facility is sector agnostic. Are you considering specific sectors, or those projects, businesses can be in any industries to qualify for financing from your program? So could you be a little bit, for example, to briefly stop at eligibility criteria in terms of what the requirements for companies, whether in terms of their revenue size or number of people, or the business model they use or technology they use, would be appreciated. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you, Serdar, for your question. I think it's probably, I would answer that question in two ways. I think, first of all, EBRD as a whole has a number of sectors in which we do not invest, whether it's a green project or not. This would be, for example, the tobacco industry or the liquor or other sectors, and I think it's quite well known. I mean, it's all shown on the EBRD website what sectors we do not invest in. Obviously, also anything related to coal is also sort of out of bounds. But beyond that, I think we're pretty agnostic. I mean, of the three programs I presented, as I've shown, the eligibility criteria are more to do with the scope of the project, right? So in order for the EBRD to consider something a green project, we have our own methodology, which is also developed in collaboration with other MDBs. And of course, for each of the programs, we have certain eligibility criteria from our donors. So for example, with the GCF High Impact Program, as I've shown, this is focused on the manufacturing and services industry, agribusiness, and the non-energy mining sectors. For the GEF facility that I showed, again, There's no minimum size of loan from our side. It's probably more a decision of our partner financial institution. And the same applies for the Fintech program. So we're quite agnostic and always happy to work across sectors.
Vincent, could you briefly stop at other initiatives and financing deals apart from private sector? And we know that EBRD has committed, I do not recall the exact figure, that EBRD committed to finance several millions of dollars for solar projects in Uzbekistan. As far as I know, it was a Masdar.
Yes, yes, correct. So we signed, thank you, we signed our first renewable energy project with Masdar last year. This is a 100 megawatt solar power plant in Navoy. It's one of the first privately owned renewable projects in Uzbekistan. So very pleased to be working on this, also of course closely with other multilateral financial institutions like the IFC and ADB. Beyond that, obviously in infrastructure more broadly, we're supporting municipal projects, for example, with water utilities, which typically also have an energy efficiency, water efficiency angle. We're supporting the development of the transmission, electricity transmission network with the local grid and transmission operators. We have a EBRD Green Cities program, which we would very much like to replicate in Uzbekistan as well. So yeah, very broad range in all the sectors, transport as well. So yeah, I think in nearly any sector we can certainly work with local counterparties, be that private or public sector.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vincent. So, Mr. Akramov, could you, in a couple of words, stop at the financing terms? What are the requirements to qualify your financing? Just in a couple of words, please.
Sorry, could you please, Sardar, repeat your last statement? I didn't catch.
Yeah, again, in terms of eligibility for your financing, during your presentation, there were several requirements to be eligible for the projects, but in terms of financing terms, conditions for potential projects from private sector in Uzbekistan, in terms of ticket size, interest rates, tenor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, we talked about the green financing opportunities in Uzbekistan. Currently, we have a lot of ongoing grant projects, which funded by EBRD and UNDP in other international organizations. The first requirement is to be the consortium of the project, and also directly SMEs can go to the bank with the business plan and then to get those funds for their business or to purchasing, let's say, their green technologies. This is the first option. Currently, as far as I know, it is still opportunity to get from JAF project and also from World Bank project under Energy Efficiency Facility for Industrial Enterprises project. Of course, we are trying to support SMEs in tourism sector as acted. The project funded by European Union. We would like to launch a competition, business plan competition between MSMEs, and then MSMEs can participate in our competition. Who will win? And then we can provide small grants to develop, let's say, green hostels, and then to build up, let's say, demonstration sites. We would like to allocate 3 small grants in Uzbekistan. Now we are working on that. First of all, the requirement is to be green hostel, and then to follow with the global sustainable tourism criteria indicators. Now the work is going on. Of course, we encourage our enterprises to be more effective, and then follow with Acted's Facebook page. We will post timely our requirements to be part of the project. This is also opportunity. Last but not least, another opportunity. Recently, a new company launched the pay-go model, pay-as-you-go model. This is Edison's Power. Why I would like to advertise this model, because they are also our partner. We are closely working with them. This is good opportunity for enterprises to get, let's say, the renewable energy technology, and then to have access to electricity without the investments, without any kind of the payment. They just will pay for the system, and then the company will provide solar panel, and then you can pay like this on monthly basis. So such kind of opportunities we have. I'm happy that you raised this important question, but also as international organizations, we have to help to SMEs to develop their capacity, to develop their skills on business planning. We are happy to cooperate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isamuddin. Just organizers, that there is a question on the chat box from Saida Yusupova. She's saying, can I ask a question? Please, I can't see raise your hand option. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Saida Yusupova, you are on. Yeah, please address your question.
Thank you very much, Sardor. Thank you very much to all panelists. This is amazing and very interesting and informative sessions. It's great that we're having this kind of sessions in Uzbekistan. I'm a founder of a company, consultancy, working in the area of green technologies. We are working in this area for 5 years. We run a number of innovation programs in this sector. We have a startup program called Climate Launchpad that we run for the last 2 years in Uzbekistan. And we would be happy to cooperate with some programs that were mentioned today as well. So I would like to ask, what we can see, working with SMEs and startups in Uzbekistan, that they are happy to jump into, these opportunities, but they don't have enough information, and they don't have enough information what they are going to gain, out of these opportunities. So my question is probably to the project. Do you plan any, awareness raising or some campaigns to make this information more, accessible to larger, to more businesses like in Uzbekistan? Because still they don't have enough understanding, of how this is going to work and what they're going to gain. This is the first question. And the second one,
could you, for the sake of time, be brief, please?
Sure. And the second question to Mr. Vincent, he mentioned about a Green Cities project in Uzbekistan. I've heard about this a few years ago, so it would be really useful if he could share more when it's going to start in Uzbekistan and which sectors are going to be also involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Ina. So Vincent, could you start from the second one, and by the time the project and relevant colleagues formulate the answers to the first question? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for the question. So the EBRD Green Cities program is a regional program that covers our region where we operate. And that basically how it works is that cities should become part of this initiative. So once they show their interest to become part of this program, and once we identify a so-called initial investment and trigger project, we can start with working with the city to develop a Green City Action Plan, which is a 5-year investment plan prioritizing sustainability investments. As of now, we've not identified any city in Uzbekistan, but we're certainly very keen to start working in Uzbekistan. We have about over 40 cities in this program, also cities like Almaty and Dushanbe in the region. So yes, it's really, we hope to have cities join shortly, but it's very much up to the cities to show their interest. So watch this space.
Thank you. Now, with regard to the first question, Azamat, could you take that from your end as being a project manager for this project? My answer would be, in brief, yes.
If I may as well.
Sure.
Yeah, Azamat, yeah, you take it later. I will leave. In fact, on that question, I'm very grateful, Saida, that you raised it, and it's great to hear that type of a question, because for some time we have been thinking of how to kind of more engage with the private sector on the greening side. So it's great that you think that there is a need and there is a potential to work on that. We have been exploring which way we shall better access to the private sector. We were thinking through some of the associations, but very much interested to consult you further how to do it the best. So I hope my colleagues will be speaking this topic with you. But that was a very general. Azamat will say probably more. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, I think we need to wrap up the session because we're running out of time. I will follow up separately with each question that was raised through the chat lately, and we will try to link you to directly to the speakers on relevant questions to the speakers. Thank you. And with this, I would like to announce a short coffee break with short videos, and we'll please use it wisely for stretching, coffee break. And then we'll go ahead further with another great session on digital transformation. Thank you very much.
And just I would like to thank my panelists as well.
Colleagues, I think we can start our next session if everyone is ready. So the session is dedicated to the enabling environment for the digital transformation in the private sector. This, yes, the session will be led by Mr. Johannes Steinbeck-Madsen, Head of Cooperation and Delegation of European Union to Kazakhstan. Please, Mr. Madsen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, good morning to the Western participants, and good afternoon to the Central Asian participants. I'm very pleased and honored to be able to welcome you to this session on an enabling environment for the digital transformation in the private sector. I believe we have managed to bring together a very interesting panel of uniquely expert individuals who from different perspectives can improve and broaden our collective understanding of an issue of significant importance for the successful green recovery and more generally the development of the global economy. The cross-sectoral approach needed for a green recovery represents both a risk and a challenge, as it requires trust-based and inclusive partnerships and results-oriented coordination and management of resources. As we have learned over the last couple of days, a number of sectors can advance the progress towards a low-carbon economy, such as energy, water management, and agri-food. During this final session of the forum, we will talk about the link between digitalization, which is inseparable from a green recovery, and private sector development. Digital solutions can directly enable the transition to a green economy and the business environment that creates more green and decent jobs. Digitalization can help numerous, if not all sectors, to transit to a circular economy, provided that smart and evidence-based policies and instruments are put in place for both the government and the private sector. As all of you know, the government of Uzbekistan has been actively introducing ambitious reforms in the country, especially since 2017. They have addressed all spheres of the economy and required innovative solutions to increase the country's competitiveness and align it with international standards, including the ones concerning climate and environmental protection. Such reforms could not and cannot be successful without the digital transformation and private sector development. The COVID-19 crisis has only reinforced the common recognition that digital economy and e-governance must be at the top of the government's agenda. In the October 2020 strategy, Digital Uzbekistan 2030, a roadmap and a list of programs were approved by presidential decree. Within this framework, the strategy introduces over 400 information systems, electronic services, and other software products at a regional level. A share of at least 5% of the total funds for investment projects will be directed to digital components, and all administrative procedures and mandatory payment systems will be digitized. With a population of 34.5 million people and 25.14 million mobile connections in Uzbekistan and counting, the digital economy currently contributes with a modest 1.8% to national GDP. So from that, you can see that there is an enormous untapped potential for the economy. The success of digital Uzbekistan will require a close partnership between the public and private sectors across all spheres. During the upcoming discussion, we will try to identify some of the ways to engage and support the private sector in Uzbekistan's journey of digital transformation and provide examples on why it is so important for a greener recovery. I'm now very pleased to introduce our panel and speakers. First, where I'm honored to introduce Mrs. Elizabeth Türk. She's the director of the Economic Cooperation and Trade Division at the UN Economic Commission for Europe. And she joins us from Geneva to share insights on the digital tools for a green COVID-19 recovery and how to support the private sector development. I'm also honored to introduce Mr. Will Thompson, the head of the Eurasia division at the OECD's Global Secretariat, who will share OECD's observations on the lessons learned on the COVID-19 crisis concerning private sector development. We also have with us Mr. Pekka Sivonen, who is head of the European collaboration at Business Finland, which is a Finnish government organization for innovation funding and trade, travel, and investment promotion. Mr. Sivonen will share the experience of Finland in adopting the digital nexus for enabling environment for innovation and private sector development. And last but not least, our panel include Mrs. Evija Pudane, who is the executive director at Cleantech Latvia. She will share with us successful examples of how the small and medium-sized enterprises can cooperate with government to support a green recovery without requiring radical changes or resources. Dear participants, without further ado, I would now like to offer the floor to our speakers. Each of the 4 speakers will have 7 minutes for their initial interventions, and I kindly request all panel members to respect that. After the 4 speeches, we will continue with a question and answer session where our panelists, of course, will have the possibility to talk again, and they will try to respond to questions from the audience. Let me remind you that registered participants will be able to raise their questions and share their experiences and insights using the Zoom option, raise a hand, or the chat box. Now I'll pass the floor on to Mrs. Türk. Mrs. Türk, the floor is yours. I do not hear anything. I don't know if the presenter is muted. Or...
No, unfortunately, Mrs. Türk, it seems there's a problem with your microphone. We do not hear you.
Now, hear me? It worked before in the test.
Yes,
okay,
we hear you now.
Let me put away my earphones and thank you for alerting me. So once again, thank you for having UNEC's Economic Cooperation and Trade Division with you at this very exciting and very important and timely event. And congratulations also to the government of Uzbekistan. It's really documented the resolve with which the government is embarking on the green transition and harnessing the opportunities that are rising in this regard. So that's really amazing. What I would like to do in the 6 minutes that are allocated to me, and Mr. Chair, please kindly assist me with the timekeeping. I'd like to document 5 key issues at the interface between digitalization, private sector engagement, and green recovery, climate protection, and the sustainable development goals. And with these 5 entry points, I very much hope that I can set the scene for the discussion we are having in this session, but that I can also make you curious about the tools that UNECE offers and inform you on some of the activities we are undertaking with Uzbekistan and with the region. And here I'd also like to highlight the role of Uzbekistan as this year's chair of SPECA, the Special Program for Economies in Central Asia, And I could imagine that the government can also show some leadership for the region in this regard. Now, what are the 5 areas I've chosen for you? There are first 2 cross-cutting areas. Innovation and investment are key elements for a green COVID-19 recovery. And you've just had an amazing discussion about financing and investment. So maybe I will more zoom into the innovation part of it and highlight to you UNEC tools on innovation governance policies and processes, and make you aware that in the SPECA context, there is also the SPECA innovation for sustainable development strategy, and that might be a good entry point. I might keep my remarks on public-private partnerships short because you've just had a session on investment and mobilizing financing. But I would then flag 3 examples, which I consider real areas of growth for harnessing the power of digitalization for a green recovery. And that is first, using digitalization to facilitate multimodal transport connectivity. So the seamless interaction between different types of transport needed for trade, for import and export. Secondly, the use of blockchain to create supply chain traceability. Cotton supply chains we are currently piloting with the blockchain technologies. And thirdly, more broadly, harnessing trade as a force for inclusion and sustainability. And here that's maybe also something that is of relevance for Uzbekistan as you are stepping up your engagement in the multilateral trade context, in the WTO context. So very briefly, starting with innovation, clear, we need innovation for transitioning to the green economy. And that's not only high-end, very sophisticated innovation, but that's also small-scale innovation that allows businesses, the private sector, to have better processes, to have better business models. We have to make sure that innovation can be applied. And here, these linkages between the public sector and public innovation institutions and the private sector, including small and medium-sized enterprises, is really, really crucial. But what's the challenge? And one key challenge here is that innovation is inherently uncertain. That's the nature of innovation. And it's therefore very hard to have the right policy tools, governance tools, and policy processes that can spur this innovation and that can really focus on those innovative and potentially high growth enterprises that drive economic experimentation and that bring us forward. So 2 key solutions that UNEC is offering in this respect, and one of them being regional. I've already flagged the SPECA innovation strategy for sustainable development. The second one is country specific. I'm proud to tell you that we are in the process of doing an innovation for sustainable development review for Uzbekistan. And in fact, we'll have a stakeholder consultation tomorrow in the presence of the Deputy Minister of Innovation and Development. And there we are really zooming into what are the innovation policy tools and institutions that can support the private sector in terms of innovation with particular potential for not only economic, but also social and environmental returns. When we do that, there are certain cross-cutting chapters we are addressing in our research, but we always focus on the specific demands of the country. And I have learned that in the context of Uzbekistan, the science-business linkage, so exactly what we are talking about in this panel, is one of the key areas of interest, so we'll definitely address this. Now, second cross-cutting issue, PPP, I will keep short as you have just discussed financing and mobilizing investment. Here, maybe just briefly to say that UNECE has a PPP model in terms of people first, public-private partnership, and we are supporting governments in the development of PPP projects and in the development of the regulatory framework that supports PPPs. And when doing that, we are moving away from the classic PPP model. We've always seen that there are significant challenges with people first with public-private partnerships, and we have identified 5 areas where we really focus on access and equity, economic effectiveness, but also environmental sustainability. Now, the newest tool we have here is an evaluation methodology, which allows for the scoring of public-private partnership projects so that we can see to what extent are projects really people first, are pursuing the high endeavors we have, including environmental sustainability. And to mention to you that we will have an award context for People First PPPs in the context of our People First PPP Forum in April. And governments and project coordinators may wish to apply and submit their projects so that we can jointly see the extent to which they are people first and sort of like also allocate awards in this regard. Now, for the sake of time, let me quickly come to the three very concrete areas that link us to digitalization. And the first one is the multimodal transport connectivity. So if countries wish to benefit from trade, export and import, doing that efficiently and doing that efficiently across different modes of transport, sea, rail, road, air, is very important. And we have just seen in the context of the COVID crisis that the border blocking and delays, they really created a significant challenge, and that was also the case in Central Asia. So what is UNECE doing here? We are providing our multimodal transport reference data model to really ensure a seamless flow of information across these different ways of transport, so that ultimately goods can flow and move much easier across borders. Now, as our newest initiative, we are supporting countries to turn all of this digital, to not only have the information for this multimodal transport connectivity on paper, but to do it electronically. And that might also yield benefits, as we've just seen in terms of COVID, as it reduces the need for people-people contact, because essentially we will be all moving to the electronic interface. We are doing that with support of a United Nations Development Account project, and Uzbekistan is not yet specifically one of the countries we are working on, but I would like to invite you to explore what we can do in this regard. Now, the second very concrete application where digitalization can help the green transformation is supply chain traceability. And again, we approach it from a trade angle. If countries wish to export and import, and particularly gain and benefit from exports, they need to be able to serve the right consumer markets. And what we have seen in many areas now in Europe, and including Switzerland here in Geneva, is that sustainability matters more and more for the choices of consumers. So if we are buying food or if we are buying clothing, textiles, consumers not only look at the price, but they look also at the environmental and social conditions under which these products have been produced. And in UNECE, we assist countries now to trace this supply chain, so as to be able to document that the products are complying with environmental and social criteria. And our most recent activity in this regard is a pilot where we are, together with Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Egypt, and the UK, tracing the supply chain of cotton. And here again, it's something where Uzbekistan is not yet involved, but I would like to flag that to you as maybe one interesting area, given the importance of cotton exports also for your country, that this might be something to look at. I could imagine that we are having a timing challenge, so I will leave the remarks on the last item very short, just to tell you that in the context of SPECA, there are principles for sustainable trade, which we are now helping SPECA countries to implement through analytical studies. And here, maybe for Uzbekistan, as you're stepping up your engagement in the multilateral trade context with WTO, where questions of sustainability are also increasingly important, that might be an area to look at. So with this, I close. I hope I've provided you with an overview of what UNECE has to offer in the area of innovation and public-private partnerships as two cross-cutting areas, and then zooming into three examples of digitalization for multimodal transport connectivity, digitalization to trace supply chains like blockchain and cotton, and sustainable trade more broadly. And I hope that I will get some questions and be able to answer them and have made you curious about what we can do jointly on this journey towards the green recovery. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation with lots of details that I'm sure have make people reflect, or participants reflect on the future opportunities in Uzbekistan. But with no further ado, and in the interest of time, I will now pass the floor on to our next speaker, William Thompson from OECD. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johannes. It's good to see you, and Elizabeth. Thank you to the organizers for having me. I just want to try and cover 3 points, perhaps with a broader focus on digitalization than Elizabeth's, although she's covered many things I might otherwise have looked at, so that's helpful. First of all, a bit about what we at the OECD observe in the context of the pandemic. We've been tracking the digital transformation for years, and even more so in respect of the current situation. And I'd make really 3 points. The overriding message of all 3 is that digital divides are multiple, that they were there before the crisis, that they have grown more often than not, and they matter more than ever. Because one of the clearest lessons of the crisis is that digital divides often overlap with other socioeconomic and spatial disparities. Just a few examples. First of all, our work on teleworking shows very clearly that opportunities for teleworking across the world are positively and strongly correlated with skills, income, and urbanization, which reflects both the quality and the availability of infrastructure, the availability of skills, but also firm sizes and the sectors involved. I mean, the fact of the matter is that rural activities in particular tend to be naturally less suited to teleworking arrangements. But all of those dimensions tend to reinforce socioeconomic and spatial inequality. Secondly, the evidence on school disruption and e-learning tells a similar story. School closures in 2020 clearly reinforced existing disparities in access to and quality of schooling. And a final lesson, which is a bit more positive, is that we have seen just how nimble and responsive firms can be to new circumstances and opportunities. The explosion of new approaches to electronic business, to digital commerce has been tremendous, and clearly going forward offers enormous opportunities in terms of reducing resource use, not just energy and emissions, but really a much more resource efficient economy altogether, which from a circular economy perspective has to be welcomed. But at the same time, we have observed that small and medium firms, especially in poorer countries, face particular challenges and barriers, and they do need support. So the second question is really where Uzbekistan stands, and the short answer is it's improving fast, but it's still quite some ways from where it needs to be. I had a look at the latest available data, of course they're pre-COVID, on fixed broadband, mobile cellular subscriptions, internet use, and so on. They all show not only that Uzbekistan is well behind the averages for the OECD area, which is perhaps not surprising given levels of income and development, but it is also well below, and in the case of broadband, far below, the average for upper middle income countries worldwide. And this is clearly something that has to be addressed, and I'll speak about that in a moment. Secondly, I was particularly struck by the 2020 B2C e-commerce index that is prepared by UNCTAD, where Uzbekistan, despite improving performance, actually slipped from 94th to 107th of the 152 countries rated. That's not because things were getting worse in Uzbekistan. It's an illustration of the fact that many countries are improving, and they're improving fast. And in that sense, we have to see quite rapid improvements we have to run very fast to stay in place. Other more positive news, the Electronic Government Development Index is actually relatively high for Uzbekistan. And we see important improvements in the areas that Elizabeth was talking to with respect to cross-border paperless trade. I think the striking thing in much of Central Asia, not only Uzbekistan, is this gap between the kind of rapid advance of e-government with very strong state administrations trying to roll out lots of digital initiatives for the public sector, and a private sector that is often lagging behind. I think the last point I would mention is affordability before I talk about what we need to do. In fact, affordability is a key issue to address. In 2018, the ITU UNESCO Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development set a kind of target for 2025 that entry-level broadband services should be made affordable in developing countries. And that was defined as less than 2% of monthly GNI per capita. The latest data I see for Uzbekistan, again, from before the pandemic, show a figure of almost 4%. So there's a long way to go. It's lower than in some regional peers, but it's still well above what it could be. It's well above its neighbor Kazakhstan and the OECD average. And this is really important. The affordability of access is obviously crucial, especially for households and small firms, for making this an inclusive process. So what do we need looking forward? Very briefly in the time left, I want to stress what is really required is something everyone talks about, but it's very hard to do, and that is a comprehensive whole of government approach to the digital transformation. It's often talked about, but as we see even in OECD countries, when we review their digital strategies, they are often very patchy in their coverage. Important elements are overlooked. It is very difficult to exaggerate the kind of transversal character of the digital transformation. So you see in many countries, the whole focus is on ministries responsible for digital, promoting digital infrastructure and digital skills, which are clearly essential. But oftentimes what has to be looked at are issues that go beyond that, such as competition law and policy, which can be especially important. In some of the countries where we see the biggest affordability problems, we also see the exercise of enormous market power. So the OECD has prepared a kind of going digital toolkit, which we're actually adapting for work with countries in the Eastern Partner region and Central Asia. And that going digital toolkit tries to look at 7 different dimensions, really encompassing all of the areas of digital transformation, including those that are often overlooked. Because much of what we need to do is in software infrastructures. It's about digital security. It's about adaptation of basic commercial law to the realities of digital commerce. It is, of course, also about digital skills and e-government services. And it is about work with SMEs in particular, where we have an important work stream, trying to help SMEs overcome the specific barriers that they face in going digital. And I can see I've hit the 7-minute mark, so I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, first of all, for respecting the time limit. I must say you are raising a lot of very interesting issues, and I hope the participants are taking note and preparing their questions for our Q&A. Certainly obvious that digitization has many implications for important sectors, trade in particular, I would say, which is so critical for the continued development and further development of the region, and Uzbekistan in particular. But again, in the interest of time, I will now, before we move to Q&A, pass the word on to the next 2 speakers, the first one being Mr. Sivonen. The floor is yours. Over.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Do you hear me okay? Okay, good. Then we just need to get the slides. Do you see anything? No slides?
No slides.
Okay. Hold on.
Please open your presentation on your computer and then share screen.
Okay, here we go. Do you
Please
see
enlarge.
those slides?
Now we see it.
Okay, so my name is Pekka Sivonen. I'm from January 1st of European Cooperation within Business Finland, which is the national innovation funding agency of Finnish government under the umbrella of Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. And During my presentation, the panel, should you hear any background noise, it's only my 8-month-old son who's here at the floor with me enjoying the show. So bear with me with that. Europe historically is at the edge of a very interesting period. Next few years will really be all about green and digital transformation of our continent, and also the strategic sovereignty of the country. And during my last 5 years, I have been doing in my previous role as executive director of digital transformation of Finnish industries. We've been spending about 1 billion euros over the last 5 years under my management into 5G, artificial intelligence, robotics, IoT, data business models and platform economy. And thank God we did so, because the COVID crisis took everybody with a big surprise, and luckily we had been doing these investments and preparing our industries and companies to this new world. I don't think we're ever going to be coming back to the world where we left about a year ago before COVID. Our flagship collaboration with Finnish industries, our company, Business Finland, works with about 14,000 Finnish companies, and our flagship project in digital transformation with some of our leading companies, GE Healthcare, Ponsse, Forest Harvester company, and others, has been the Reboot IoT Factory, where since the events after the collapse of Nokia handset business early 2010, 2012 timeframe, we got 40,000 people flooding into the job market, and many of those guys established companies related to sensor technologies and IoT, data analysis, artificial intelligence, and but those companies really were missing business cases, and they were unknown to the world. So we facilitated a few years back a model how to build a booster in next to the big companies. We took 7 companies and 8 factories within them, and then we facilitate a model how the government intervention with funding can bring in 40 small and medium-sized companies that were rich in technology and new ideas to boost the innovation at the floor level of these companies, exploring the new opportunities in cognitive supply chain, robotics, future, how the future work when digital hits the production will look like, and how the digital production at the end of the day will look like. Already after first year of a 3-year project, these companies had put together 20 proof of concepts, and during the period of 3 years, they produced 120 proof of concepts to be implemented for level of production. Each of these bigger companies had their own challenges, and they were sharing the challenges openly within the community that was forming the Reboot IoT Factory. And everybody was collectively learning, and 40 companies got business opportunities while doing this and putting their brain and technologies into the game. And here's one of the end results. GE Healthcare has a 900 people strong production facility downtown Helsinki, where they also have the R&D of healthcare products. And this is how their production line now looks after this project. This is not a mock-up. This is a real deal picture. 200 robot installing acute care hospital equipment and double degree PhD guy programming. We are forming augmented intelligence where humans, artificial intelligence and robots are working together to evolving and together as cobots. There's a lot more things to be done, and of course there's a ladder or a stepway to get into the next phase, and we started from traditional factories. Now we are in modern factories and agile factories phase, but there's always a second level where you want to go. And this really, this kind of developments in the society, they really scream for holistic thinking, because of the education system, how the future workforce will be trained needs to be part of this. And we have been enjoying tremendous collaboration between companies and the academia when doing a bigger picture for this. There's a national program on artificial intelligence that we started 2017, and now there's last year we announced sorry about the guy. we announced a continuum to this national strategy on artificial intelligence. There's an artificial intelligence 4.0 program ongoing by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and we are now spreading the wings of the project, and Reboot IoT Factory already has been replicated into 3 industries, different verticals, and according to the European Commission evaluation, it might be the flagship of how to accelerate innovation speed in industry in industrialized country like Finland. Another example by some of the other leading companies, some of them being the same, is the digital game changers project by the Federation of Finnish Industries, and they have announced quite recently in December a 3.5 billion euro investment on green and digital transition, 5G industrial technology, automated and carbon neutral marine logistics, cybersecurity, digital way of working, sustainable and healthy solutions. So that was my 5 cents of an ideas what we have been doing here in Finland, and happy to discuss this more in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation. Interesting reminder about the change in the IT sector in Finland with the Nokia handset business being replaced by with new startups in this area. I think that's probably some very interesting lessons to learn for many industries and businesses in all of this. Let's before we move on to the questions, and I'm sure there'll be a lot after these 3 very interesting presentations. Let's have I will now pass the floor on to our last panelist and the last presentation from our 4th speaker, Mrs. Evija Pudane. Mrs. Pudane, the floor is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here. After listening to the presentation of previous speaker, of course, I'm always want to move to the Finland when I hear those innovation approaches and strategies for the next periods. So I will focus a little bit on the lower level. I would like to talk a little bit about some specific cases to demonstrate how the small and medium enterprises can change the situation in the countries and how they can improve our lives, and also how to make those first steps for everyone, for every industry, for every organization, however it happens. So my name is Evija Pudane, and I'm working with the cluster organization Cleantech Latvia. And also since 2012, we are making some steps in Central Asia, and since 2014, we also start our activities in Uzbekistan. So it was my pleasure to learn more about these economies and so what happens there. So, do you see my presentation well?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So, okay. So, what about I would like to talk a little bit? I would like to cover some cases that I see as very effectively made by small and medium enterprises, and giving the municipalities and the local governments the next level of their growth. And what I would like to point out today is that society plays a significant role in our nowadays lives, and not only digitalization. We need to start to listen more to society, because very often they know what is needed better than governments knows. And also I would like to say that also this question that already Pekka raised about the 4 Ps, yes, that's the issue why our governments make some success, because they start to listen to society, and so what the society can bring to the countries and to the economies. I will show 3 cases. I hope that I will be in my 7 minutes. The first of all, I would like to talk about some small company. It's about 40 employees today, who decided to make the changes in the waste management. Based on their knowledge about the geographical information systems, they decided that need to optimize waste management. What we get in the result, we saw the company who helps to waste management companies know their members, their customers. They know how to pick their waste. They see that all of the customers in any building have their contract to collect this waste. And now they start to move with this product to other industries that is very often municipalities managed. It's like our government, it's like transport on demand for rural areas. It's like road maintenance and follow how it's done well. It's important for us in wintertime. It's post services. I know it's also very important for public support in COVID-19 times, when the governments or local governments bring some support to the families. And if we talk about the waste collection, then of course it was the very important issue that we know our customer, we know how to get to our customer, and we can organize the roads and planning of roads in the way that we spend less time in the way, we spend less energy to collect this waste, and we also reduce our costs, and it brings the real impact for any company that works on that. The next topic is more about the municipalities. And this is the case where I'm showing it because it's again about activities that can be done by small and medium SMEs without any investment from the government in the beginning. The government came as the customer finally to the ready product, and only input from the government and from local municipalities in the beginning were the sharing the data, sharing the information, and sharing the problems that they are facing. So it's very crucial that municipalities and governments starts communication with the small and medium enterprises, starts this communication with society, and brings to the table those topics that is important and actual. So what was the result? Result is the, again, geographical information system for collecting, maintaining, publishing, and analyzing spatial data. What the municipalities get? They get the several layouts into the one system that they can see all the data that is available or can be important for the local government for the management of the infrastructure and etc. So like it's vegetation environment, that can be trees, that can be planting and landscaping, this could be flood management. So you know that there is the territories that will be affected every spring by floods, and you can react in the right manner, in the right time, and you can predict the situation. Or you can get the information about your real estate, what is owned by municipality, or you can know what is the private sector, what is not the private sector. It's like, I know that everyone knows the picture of red lines, that you see your red lines, you know your case, and you know all your infrastructure that is affected by that. Or, for example, to register the roads, streets, reports, all the elements of the roads, or the same accidents. So you see where the problem rises up, and you can take a look deeper, and you are not collecting those data somewhere in the end of the month. You're getting them, in most of the cases, daily updated from the different databases that exist already in the country. Or you, as for cleantech, it's important, of course, when we talk about the networks of different infrastructure elements like the sewage networks, water supply networks, heating networks, or lighting. So you can see all the elements, and you know where it happens, what was done, and you can collect all the data over the periods of several years, that what was done with particular element, or what is the contact person for particular element. And that is the step of digitalization that goes our municipalities just by the super initiative from the private sector. And my third case is the small city in Latvia. I think that from the perspective of the Uzbekistan, it's really small. It's just 60,000 inhabitants. But this is the smartest city in the Latvia. And I guess that all of us already recognize this. Why? Because in this city, there was some persons, just few persons, who have always strategic plan, and who have always tactical plan, how they will implement this. 15 years ago, they started the first steps to make the city safer, because there was a lot of railroads and there was a lot of traffic there. There was also the dangerous traffic, and so they decided they need to be sure that their inhabitants are safe in the cases of any catastrophe or something, if something goes wrong. But over the period, this municipality learned that inhabitants are the first persons whom interests we need to take into account, and we need to take a look how it's to live in this city. Do you like it? Do you love to be there, or you would like to move to the other city? And over the years, they became our leaders. And just one final example, how they built the program together with small and medium enterprises. They built a new program for to share the information, or to manage the information of given benefits in the way of the different subsidies to the families, and to be sure that the money comes to the family and it's not paid to the service supplier. They built a new program together with the small and medium businesses that if you get the benefit as a family, from your account, in the case of paying about the service, will be taken only that part that is not covered by government. And always the public service provider will get the funding directly from the bank account of the municipality after the service was served. It helped the municipality to save more than 30% of their costs in the first months. At the same time, this business was built by this solution was built by small and medium enterprise by their own initiative, just by getting the information from municipality. So I would like to point out that a couple of persons can make a big shift. So don't be afraid to make those big steps and move forward. The digitalization is the very crucial issue, and we can't avoid it. And I would advise everyone to improve your digital skills. I improved my digital skills through the learning of artificial intelligence that was brought by Finnish government to the societies around the world, not only to the Finland. So enjoy those initiatives, go ahead and learn more what you can do together with the small and medium enterprises, and you will see that huge opportunities for growing your economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for yet another very interesting and inspiring presentation. We will now move to our questions and answer session. And I think we will probably have time for 4 questions, and I can see a lot of questions already came in through the chat. Given that Elizabeth Turk and Bill Thompson started, I want to ask the assistance of Danya, my colleague in Tashkent, if maybe he could ask the first question from the chat to either Elizabeth Turk or Bill Thompson. Daniel, over to you.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much, Johannes. I think there was a comment from Mr. Sivonen mentioning how about updating the PPP term into the private-public people partnership. We are from now on building citizen-centric societies anyway, so this would be timely upgrade towards that direction. So this was a comment first from Mr. Sivonen. Then there was a question to Mr. Pekka Sivonen about what new types of artificial intelligence products are you producing? And maybe perhaps it's better to ask a question directed to Elizabeth Turk so that she can prepare. Is it possible to establish consortia between the state organization, which is fully financed by the budget by the governmental budget, with the private company? So the consortia between the state organization and private company. What are the conditions in this case for obtaining a loan or grant? Thank you. That's it so far.
So there was a question to Elizabeth Turk there. I don't know, Mrs. Turk, did you understand the question, or do you want to repeat it? Or...
Shall I give it a go? Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the questions, and maybe I'll take the consortia loan part a little bit later or bilaterally, because we're not really talking about loans in that context, but it's a question related to PPP, and PPP was also part of the first question, which I think really is a crucial one. We've seen the important role of public-private partnerships for the Agenda 2030, and we see PPPs even mentioned in the many Agenda 2030 documents. Now, we've also seen really in developing transition economies, but also developed countries, that the PPP model doesn't quite work. And that's why I very much agree with the comment in the box. It's important to add the people dimension to the public-private partnership. And that's what UNECE is doing in terms of saying we talk about people first public-private partnership. And that's why we have established these 5 criteria where access and equity for the people, for the poor and marginalized, is really, really very central. Environmental sustainability is central. And very crucial also is this idea of stakeholder engagement. That's pillar 5 in our people first public-private partnership, saying that when one develops a project, one really needs to involve the people on the ground. Yeah, and that is particularly important for infrastructure projects, both the old school, but also the new sustainable infrastructure projects, where it's essential to involve the people whose habitat will be affected. And in UNECE, we try to now really evaluate and score projects along these lines. Doesn't mean we sort of like evaluate negatively, but we evaluate from the perspective of providing scope for improvement. Yeah, so it's always a joint process, and here the people first dimension is essential. So I think I will leave it with that. One comment, I couldn't agree more with what Tom said, Bill said from OECD, and a question to the audience and to the organizers is that in UNECE we now talk a lot about circular economy. Yeah, to what extent has this come up in Uzbekistan in terms of making the green transition also an opportunity to move from linear to circular? So if there are any thoughts on this, I would love to hear them as well. Thank you.
I wonder if we could also ask maybe ask Bill Thompson also to give his comment on this question, because it touched upon areas that he also touched upon in his presentation, in particular PPPs. I don't know, Bill, would you like to comment?
No, I mean, first of all, I was nodding vigorously. I'm sure all the participants could hear me nodding my head as Elizabeth was speaking, particularly with infrastructure issues about the need to engage local communities and other stakeholders. We've learned a lot about PPPs and how they do and don't work, and why they often don't. And that's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect I would add, which is to my mind, central, and I encounter this misunderstanding a lot in the Eastern Partner region and in Central Asia, has to do with the public finance implications of PPPs. Because I think very often there's a kind of naive understanding, the idea that PPPs are healthier for public finances, which frankly, if the thing is well designed, it should be. But the problem is very often the design of the PPP is simply structured in such a way as to keep an awful lot of contingent liabilities off the books. When we approach PPPs, having a really, really rigorous approach to the way public sector accounts are kept is absolutely central, because many of the most controversial PPP failures in the developed world have emerged precisely because when you really look at it very closely, the public sector came to this with a rather crude understanding of the finances, partly because, paradoxically enough, most governments in the world do not keep their books in the way that a serious private company would. They don't use generally accepted accounting principles or international standards. Many of them, don't properly amortize. So often what you see is mobilization of private finance in the short term as a way of relieving short-term budgetary stress that creates long-term challenges. So I would emphasize both. We need to be looking harder at the numbers, and we need to be engaging more seriously with all those who will be affected.
Thank you very much. We heard already there were a couple of questions to Mr. Sivonen. I wonder if I could pass the floor on to him to try and respond to those. Over.
Okay, thank you. First of all, what kind of new types of artificial intelligence are we developing? I would mention two. First of all, the elements of AI, the online course, which is free. We gave that for free as a present of our presidency to all European countries, and it's actually freely available for Uzbeks as well, but not in your native language. Elementsofai.com is the domain for that. If you're not familiar, please check it out, because our aim is to train 1% of humanity, all people on the planet, to understand better what AI is all about, including European Commission institutions. And I would love to do that for OECD and United Nations as well, because we need to deal with the devil himself from now on, and we need to be better prepared as civil servants and officials. Second thing that I would like to really highlight is a flagship project by the government that we have been working for 4 years already. It's Aurora AI, which is basically a tool to provide public services online to our citizens in a citizen-centric way. Our people should never, ever again answer the same question coming from government direction twice. And we are building a family of bots that are aware of your previous discussions and your life situation. And our aim is pretty bold, because Finland is, after Japan, second most rapidly aging population on the planet. And in the government, federal government and municipalities, there will be 200,000 people retiring before 2030. And our ambitious goal is not to hire anybody to replace them. We are going to be replacing them with the implementation of AI into the society.
Very interesting. I think this. I think your statement on being ready to deal with the devil will rest in our minds for the future. Also, very interesting. Also, your last statement implies that we also need to be prepared to deal with what negative impact digitization might have in terms of employment. There are both risks and opportunities in this respect. We also heard a very interesting presentation from Mrs. Paduna. I wonder, Daniel, was there a specific question related to our last presentation? Over.
So far, we have the all questions that we have. I mentioned them. So far, we don't have questions in the chat box. But if you have some from your side,
yeah. Thank you. Yes, no. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity because I took, of course, note being a representative of the European Union. I took note of the benefits that was mentioned in the learning from other states within the European Union that was emphasized in the fourth presentation. I wonder also if some of these projects that were mentioned in Mrs. Paduna's presentation also benefited from EU funding for any of the many programs that the EU are funding in this context, or if in other ways government funding were supporting these three projects that were mentioned. Over. So this is a question to our fourth presenter, Mrs. Evia Pudana. Sorry, I didn't pronounce your name correctly. I'm sorry. So
okay.
This is Evia Pudana.
Yes, it's Evia. Yeah. If you talk about the funding in those three cases, those were the developed only by own funding of the companies, like their products. But of course, if you talk about the globalization or for some more bigger influence of such products, then of course very nice if it's financed or supported in a bigger way, like a product for the whole government. Because when we talk about like a waste management, it should be in most of the cases government pushed solutions, and the government is the first who should pay for such a service and not the private sector. I guess so, because I think that the waste management, it's the government responsibility to their citizens, how we manage it, and how we solve this. I would also like to point out that honestly advise everyone to take a look at these elements of IE that Pekka already mentioned. I passed the training and it's very easy, it's very simple, and it makes you smarter and you feel very nice when you understand that it's not so difficult as it sounded.
That sounds like very good advice to all of us. I also personally, I will follow it. It sounds very interesting. Now on this this sort of potential for peer-to-peer learning between states that I just mentioned, I don't know if I could again ask Pekka Sivonen about his experience in this context. If the Finnish government have, in his opinion, paid sufficient interest in sufficient attention to this, and if also that has involved cooperation with the European Union and European Commission in particular. Over.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. Great one. If we think about the situation where Europe sits as of today between two giant blocks, China and United States, we really need to fight for our space. And if we think about the economy and where the value has been generated over the last 10, 15 years, it's all data-driven platform economy business models that are primarily coming from the United States or China. And Europe, by the way, has 4% market share of 50 biggest platforms on the planet. So we really need to be smart. Emulating the things that those guys have been doing doesn't take us anywhere, because they started 15, 20 years earlier than we did, and there's not even dust on the road to be eaten after them. We need to figure out how to be different and how to be strong as Europeans. And here, peer-to-peer learning, I wouldn't leave it there, because if we think about what platform economy and value generation in the future will be, it will be highly based on use of data, use of artificial intelligence, use of some of the other really groundbreaking technologies, and taking the productivity in Europe up to levels unseen. I mean, robotics and artificial intelligence boosting the productivity. We need to change the culture we use our software engineers. Finland is currently missing 15,000 software engineers, Sweden 80,000, Germany 400,000 software engineers. Cumulatively, we are, when speaking about Europe, we have a shortage of 1.5 million software engineers in our continent. And this is not the way America or China uses their resources, because they have a big market area and they can implement whatever they develop nationwide. And we need to change the culture, how things are being done. I don't recognize digital single market in Europe existing anywhere else but in speeches and events like this. We need to change the culture.
Thank you very much. Sounds as a very serious piece of advice there. Again, I saw Mrs. Elizabeth Türk raised her hand. Over to you.
Thank you. Just to engage in this debate, I think it's very interesting what we also heard now about the platform economy. Yeah, and when we talk about the green transition, platform economy really has also potential for circular economy, because if used as a sharing platform, we can avoid using resources, but rather reuse resources. So I think that's a very interesting thought. It's also economically interesting as we're moving into the services economy, and I think that might offer some potential. Now, in terms of peer learning, definitely peer learning between European states is an important dimension and provides lots of opportunities. There's also peer learning in the UN context, in the regional context. And here, I'm proud to say that in UNECE, every year we have our regional forum on sustainable development, where we have these peer learning roundtables, which really aim to kind of provide for an exchanging of experiences between developing and transition economies. And all of that is feeding into the high-level dialogue in New York. So I think all these different areas of peer learning, regionally in Europe or in Central Asia through SPECA, but also interregionally, provides great opportunities. Thank you.
Bill raised his hand. The floor is yours, Bill.
Thank you, Johannes. No, just to add to what's been said, I wouldn't disagree, but I'd add a cautionary note, because it illustrates very well the issue I was describing about the way digital strategies can often be very partial in their focus and leave out important elements. The platform economy has enormous potential for the circular economy, for growth. It's not, we at the OECD are all in favor, but it raises tremendous challenges for competition policy. And we see what happens when the technical innovation races too far ahead of the competition policy settings. And you really can find yourself in situations where there are important levels of market concentration, market power, at time exercised in ways that then cut against what we were talking about in terms of the engagement of quite a wide range of stakeholders and the respect for their interests. So it's neither an endorsement nor a criticism, but just one of those markers to put down where we often see a narrow vision of what digitalization means, leaving out really important parts of the puzzle. And of course, because the players who are leading this have an interest in that market power, they're not exactly going to be the first ones to come looking for solutions.
So I think there would be potential for continuing this conversation for a lot longer. For the time being, we are right on time. And I have my colleague in Tashkent, Mr. Francois Bichot, raising his hand. So I will pass the floor on to him, maybe for a question or maybe for a wrap up. Over to you, Francois.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Johannes. Yes, I think we unfortunately have not enough time to say all what we would like to say, and we could go on. But first of all, I would like to thank you for your very good moderation and the colleague for their very interesting presentation. I think it has been extremely active and rich session. I think the subject is extremely complicated, and I would like also maybe to say that it seems to me that innovation is an old story in the world, and our society moved innovation after innovation. So the first people who invent agriculture, what an innovation. Writing, what an innovation. The wheel, what an innovation. How to sell sailing boats, how to go to discover America or whatever, you know. And therefore, I think, yes, what it teaches us that we have to think outside the box. And for our time, the innovation is digitalization, because it's a new tool that we have invented, which is extremely powerful and which can bring a lot of advantage if the devil is not killing them, if I well understood. And I understood that a bottom-up approach is something very important to keep in mind, that in fact, finally, what is important for us is a people dimension. So for sure, we have also to be careful, and in a country like Uzbekistan, for example, to not leave anyone behind, you know. So digitalization means also skill and need to make people aware about what is digitalization. So it goes through education as well, and I think the issue is very vast. So I was not pretending to say a conclusion, but just I wanted to say that few remarks, because yes, I share totally the view said by Mr. Sinovan. We are not going to coming back, and we have to go forward. And I think that innovation for us means also green economy, means that we have the challenge of environment and climate change, and this is even a pressing challenge which needs to be taken into account. And I have to say I'm very pleased to see that Uzbekistan is getting more and more serious on a green economy and green growth. And just to conclude, I would like to say that in our next program for 2021-2027, the European Union will be and will try to be a strong actor to support Uzbekistan for green growth, but also for digitalization and for build a society which leave no one behind. In conclusion, I believe that what we need to think about is to have the relevant policy to be in accordance with the choice of society that we want to build. And this will be a big challenge, but I think this seminar has given some ideas, and most probably we have to continue the discussion, but I wanted to say this few remarks and to thank all for your participation. I think this session has been particularly successful and interesting for a subject which at the beginning seems not so easy to approach. So thank you so much. Over to you, Johannes.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, only to say that I also would like to thank all the presenters and panelists. I know that more questions have come in through the chat, but I hope our presenters could deal with them bilaterally. In any case, presentations will be made available, and if there's anything we can do from the side of the organizers to facilitate continued exchanges. We're happy to do that, and I think Daniel would probably be the right person to go to in that respect. But otherwise, from me, I only want to say thank you again, and have a nice afternoon to all of our panelists.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So with that, we have finished our forum. Colleagues, many thanks. Francois closed it very well. On behalf of UNDP, I thank to all co-organizers. It has been just a great event and a very good team effort. Thank you very much. We continue in this spirit working throughout. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for participation.
Thank you, Elvira. Thank you, colleagues. We need to take the photo of ourselves.